Once upon a time, there was a creature of the deep that lived in the lowest cavern of the sea. It was a solitary creature, and always had been. One day, or whatever, it drifted along curiously as always. There wasn't much to see in the deep, and this was irrelevant because there was no light with which to see anything. The creature did not care about sight, but the creature did feel, very specifically and very minutely. It had never felt anything like itself, which was good, because the creature enjoyed feeling new things. It wanted to touch everything there was to touch, and learn all the textures and shapes that composed the vast terrain. In fact, it had never stayed in the same place for more than a moment. But in this moment, its tendrils sensed a strange texture. Soft, somewhat slimy, with long, thin wisps of carbon, not unlike its own flesh. It found this fact disturbing, but not in an unpleasant way, particularly. Unlike itself, the thing was beaten by the powerful currents of the deep, and would have been thrown about the seafloor if not for the fact that it seemed fixed in place, as if it were emanating from a point in the ground. The creature's tendrils carefully felt out the ragged path of its violent wagging. It noticed that the thing seemed to get longer over time. It didn't know how long, or how long it had been there at all. The experience of time seldom factored into its life. Sometimes a feeling of radiating emptiness grew within it, and it knew that it was time to feed from the liquid carbon that shot powerfully up from the seabed. But as for how long the duration of its feeding took, it did not know. It did not know how long it had been alive, nor could it remember where it had come from. Space was a concept it grasped with unyielding certainty. It knew where it was, how much space its body occupied, wedged between rocks and sprawling over soft clay fields. And it knew it was rather a small thing. But the thing which the creature had been observing was even smaller than itself. It was somewhere between an independent, smooth rock dislodged from the cavern's edges and the length of its own small tendril. But now, one of the thing's wisps spanned the length of the creature's tendril. The creature did not grow. It did not since the time its memories began, though it didn't know when that was or how long it had been since. There could well have been a time when it did grow a great deal. But the creature did not think that that was probable. It observed the odd thing further. It noticed if it followed the wisps all the way down that it met at the same point in the seabed. It wondered how big the thing was beneath the ground. It carefully drilled one tendril down into the earth and followed the line, only to find a point where the line split in two, emanating from a fixed point the way its top half did, the way the creature's own tendrils conjoined to its body. It inserted another tendril down into the earth to follow the line in both directions. It had to do this several hundred more times, but it found that it did not have nearly enough tendrils to follow all of the forks in the line. Further, it found that none of its tendrils were able to reach the end of the line as it followed. Had the earth made space for the thing to grow, it wondered? It considered that it might be time to abandon its observations of this unexpected, unassuming thing. But when it tried to extract itself, it found that the process required strength it did not possess. Neither could it use its tendrils to get leverage by pushing on the ground, because every one of its tendrils was stuck fastly to the earth. It felt a sense of inevitability in all this. It had wandered curiously, without much haste, for as long as it could remember. But now its observations had gotten it into a situation where it needed to beat time. It would need to feed upon carbon soon, of course. It tugged and tugged with its main body, but it had never needed to use raw force before. It was weak, it considered, but it strangely relished this new relationship with time. It could vaguely imagine how long it had left to live before the feeling of emptiness engulfed it. It panicked. It noted the feeling of panic. Its body shook and jiggled, convulsed and heaved with the unaccustomed effort. And for the first time, it wondered what would happen next. What would happen if the emptiness won? It worked so hard that it found it ran out of strength. Strength is another thing that the creature did not know could be limited. It had exhausted itself. It slowly ceased its struggling. It allowed its soft muscles time to relax. This unwinding feeling was very new, as its layers and wrinkles of gelatinous flesh released the tension that the effort had demanded. It enjoyed this feeling, a feeling of fading. Like soon, even space would have no effect on it. It finally gave into the feeling of complete lack of space and relation and texture all. It slept. When it woke, its tendrils were dangling in a gentle current. It was now entwined with the thing's roots, but not jammed into the earth itself. There was warmth around it, a warmth so consistent that the creature knew it must be very far away from the harsh cold of the depths. It felt around. The earth was indeed out of reach. Its heavy body had never left the seabed before, never explored the area its swift tendrils could not carry it. The creature knew that this surprising thing must be far longer and bigger than it could even imagine. A current passed, a strange current, a small, contained, almost probing current that did not seem to drag the water past the creature. It must have been another object, the creature realized. An object that can move at will, like itself. It found this fact disturbing, but not in an unpleasant way particularly. The object settled in amongst the tendrils and began a small, bobbing motion where it hovered. Others joined, fluttering around the creature and the thing. Suddenly, sharpness seized a tendril. One of the objects had bitten it. The creature was very curious now. It opened the mouth on the underside of its mound-like body and ate of the thing with which it had become entangled. It could survive off this thing, it realized. All new objects approached. It was a new world for the creature.